Welcome back in to Talking Catholic. The recent events surrounding Gloria Purvis and her Morning Gloria show being canceled by EWTN once again demonstrates why emotional racism is a joke, why it is a danger to society, and why it poisons any meaningful conversations we could have about the sin of racism, and how the Catholic principle of solidarity is a true countermeasure to combat the sin of racism.
That says, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me, we can't get fooled again.
Back on December of 2020, I gave a lecture on modern discourses on race from a Catholic perspective to the Raleigh Catholic Young Adults groups, in which I spoke about racism from the authentically Catholic perspective and how the Catholic principle of solidarity is the true countermeasure towards reducing racism in society. I'll post a link in the description if you'd like to watch. In short, I offered a very clear distinction between how the Catholic Church defines and views racism versus how popular culture defines and views racism. For Catholics, racism is a sin, a grave sin that divides the human family and blots out the image of God amongst specific members of that family, and how it violates the fundamental human dignity of those called to be children of the same Father. As Catholics, we believe that racism is a sin that says some human beings are inherently superior while others are essentially inferior because of their race alone. Thereby, racism is a sin associated with the sin of pride, a sin that makes racial characteristics the determining factor for the exercise of human rights. As a sin, racism belongs to the same family of sins that every human being is inclined to and can be tempted into. And based upon one's own environment, upbringing, exposure, and mental health, some people are more inclined to the sin of racism than others, just as some people are more inclined to abuse alcohol or masturbate. As a sin, racism always can be overcome through God's grace. As a sin, racism also has near occasions to fall into it. The more prejudice you have, the more likely you are to fall into it, into the sin of racism. Hanging around people who have fallen into the sin of racism puts you in a dangerous position to also fall into it. That is the sin of racism. It is objective and it is oftentimes verifiable. And it must be distinguished from the subjective emotion of racism or political racism that popular culture is referring to when they are telling us that something or someone is racist. I define political racism as the tool that governments and agencies use to bend public policy and to create victim classes of people to maintain power over. But I'm primarily talking about emotional racism here, because the recent events involving EWTN and Gloria Purvis, Morning Gloria show, offers a great construct to demonstrate this, show you how destructive and poisonous emotional racism is to conversations and dialogue. Emotional racism is solely concerned about how I feel in response to what you said or what you did, because you did or you said something that I did not agree with or made me feel attacked, and therefore you're a racist, or what you did was racist. To be sure, emotional racism does not care about the facts of the matter or doing any measure of real critical investigation. It is only concerned about feelings or being a victim to those feelings. For example, when the NFL or an NBA puts slogans on their sidelines, they are not talking about the sin of racism. They're talking about emotional racism, the feeling, and political racism. And their solution to any emotional or political racism is not the grace of God. Rather, it is purely human effort. And in this way, emotional racism and political racism are more closely associated with the heresy of humanism, which elevates the human person above the divine, than it is associated with any measure of Catholic or moral theology. At the end of 2020, EWTN decided to cancel several programs and move forward from current staffing, and as media companies are allowed to do. But When it was heard that Gloria Purvis show Morning Glory was being canceled, the immediate cry we began hearing from some segments of the Catholic Church was that EWTN was being racist. Racism was the only reason put forth to why Gloria's program was being terminated. The only reason why EWTN would cancel a show which two of the co-hosts, Gloria Purvis and Deacon Harold Brooks-Sivers, are black is because of racism. From the Twitters to Facebook, people were saying that they stand with Gloria and that EWTN needs to be boycotted because they're silencing Gloria because she had been outspoken about racial justice, police brutality, and defunding the police. Even the Black Catholic Messenger, the newest voice in Black Catholic media for culturally Black Catholic liberals, got on the parade of emotional racism by offering 2 hit pieces against EWTN. Over on the Twitters, you had Catholics like Don Eden and Mark Shea saying that they want EWTN to remove all their videos they have been featured in because they feel EWTN has sided with racists and racism by deplatforming Gloria Purvis while showcasing Raymond Arroyo, who is a racist, Don Eden said, and he's a racist against Jews and blacks, she said. Give me all my stuff back was basically the argument until you guys agree to my terms. What are these people, terrorists? I mean, this is hilarious. They're fighting harder for Gloria than they fight against the sin of abortion. Emotional racism is sort of like a Molotov cocktail bomb. You can just put it out there, just throw it anywhere you want, indiscriminately, hurt whoever you want, harm whoever. It can land wherever, do any amount of damage. It doesn't matter. You're not responsible for it. If you're getting the impression that my personal opinion of emotional racism is that it's something that adult children are engaged in, you're right. I have no respect for those who are engaged in bantering around unsubstantiated charges of a sin against a person. Calling someone a racist without objective proof is like calling someone an adulterer or a thief or blasphemer without proof. As adults and Catholics, you're not allowed to go around and saying that someone is guilty of a sinful act unless you have objective proof and you yourself are not guilty of that same sin. Grow up. But this is the problem with the emotion of racism. It's lazy. It's not Catholic, and it's not how Catholics understand the workings of sin and virtue. People who are engaged in arguing about emotional racism never take the time to consider any other options than racism. Yet, we might consider for a moment that there could be a litany of other reasons why the Morning Glory show was canceled. Perhaps the show just wasn't that good. Perhaps the Sunrise Morning show that was replacing it is better produced. Perhaps some of the co-hosts on the show did not want to be on it anymore. So due to that instability, EWTN went with a more seasoned show. Perhaps to keep their lineup fresh, EWTN just wanted to switch up their lineup. Maybe ratings were down. There could be a litany of other reasons besides racism, but rather than investigating if there were other options than EWTN being racist, the Black Catholic Messenger and Gloria's fans just went with their emotions. They said Gloria was being fired because EWTN is racist. But then why was Father Larry Richards let go? Was his contract also terminated because of racism? I'm not here defending EWTN. I completely understand why blacks and Hispanics could turn onto their programming or go to their websites like National Catholic Register and not see any bloggers or on their talent who looks like them, and they may feel unministered to or not included in a conversation. And this happens when you don't see anyone who shares your cultural experiences or your background. I get it. So when an organization already looks like they don't care about diversity or care about looking Catholic in America or looking universal, and then cancels a show with a black woman who advocates for the liberal black culture, I get the look. I understand why the emotion of racism seems rational. But all I'm saying is that you have to go the next step and test your assumptions. and be critical of your thoughts. For Catholics, racism is a sin, and we never want to be guilty of bearing false witness by calling people racist when we don't know for certain. It is long past time for the people in this country to move past emotional and political racism and begin talking about racism as a sin. That in itself is a heavy rock to lift, because we're living in a post-Christian society that doesn't believe in sin. But we must elevate, as Catholics, we must elevate these conversations and return to talking about sin versus virtue, sin versus virtue, if we ever again want to become a counter-cultural church. But until then, and until next time, blessings and shalom to you and to yours. Hi everybody, thank you for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also be sure to check out the content you've missed. If you'd like to keep supporting my work, consider joining my team on Patreon, where you'll be gifted great perks like books, hoodies, and mugs. Thanks again.